Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganandana Salaka Chakshoron Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chaitanya Manobhistam Stabitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatham Vitam Tam Sijivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dena Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhana Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Translation and commentary is Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So, we're starting the Gita anew. And no matter how many times you read the Gita, you'll find something new, right? Isn't it a fact? And it's always fresh. I was reading last night, and it was like I was reading for the first time again. Even though good, you've come. So, that is in itself proof of the transcendental nature, isn't it, in a practical way? Right? Many other so-called, anyway, we won't say anything. You can't read them but once and you think, what is this meaning? But you read Bhagavad-Gita and it's like drawing from a well of knowledge that's always fresh, never runs dry. So, please repeat. Dhammakshetre Kurukshetre Samavetaya Yukshavaha Mamakava Pandavaschaiva Kimmakurvata Sanjaya. So, word for word, please repeat. Dhritarashtravacha. King Dhritarashtra said, Dhammakshetre, in the place of pilgrimage, Kurukshetre, in the place named Kurukshetra, Samaveta, assembled, Yuyutsava, desiring to fight, Mavakaha, my party sons, Pandavaha, the sons of Pandu, Cha, and Eva, certainly, Kim, what, Akurvata, did they do? Sanjay, O Sanjay. So, translation Srila Prabhupada, Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra desiring to fight, what did they do? Please repeat. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra desiring to fight, what did they do? Purport Srila Prabhupada. Bhagavad-Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad-Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is here in the Bhagavad-Gita itself, in the way that teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Bhagavad-Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad-Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjay, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic... Oh, Radhe! This is making me sneeze. Form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmakshetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In this doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjay, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of the younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and the brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandus favorably, because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjay was a student of Vedavyas, and therefore by the mercy of Vyas, Sanjay was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana, and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons, headed by Yudhisthira, would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharmakshetra and Kurukshetra, apart from their historical and Vedic importance. Makam krochi vachalam pangam naitegirim yadkripa tamaham bande Shri Guru dinatarinam Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre samavetaya yukshava mamaka pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya Sanjay said, "O Sanjay, after the sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?" Yes, so Prabhupada explains all the basic points there in the purport. But do you see how he starts? That the Bhagavad-Gita is to be understood in disciplic succession. This is the important point. Because it has been, people have piggybacked on the Bhagavad-Gita to present their own philosophy. Politicians and speculators, and they've used the fame of the Bhagavad-Gita to reference their own philosophy, their own interpretation. So Prabhupada makes that point. No, like some people say, oh, the Kurukshetra represents the body and things like that, and Krishna is the intelligence, and so on and so forth, and this is mythology that is also, oh, this is just a big fancy story. Who could even imagine the story of the Mahabharata? It's so wonderful. Anyone that could think up something, he must be empowered by God just to imagine such a story. All other literature in the world pales in significance to the Mahabharata, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Satsandarbhas, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's absolutely no comparison. And if I may say, I studied English at college, so I used to read Shakespeare, who is considered one of the top writers in, and I used to read the philosophers. My brother, he used to give me his books. He studied philosophy. But it's just all, Shakespeare, he has got a good turn of phrase, and there's some insight into human character, and he spins a good yarn. But compared to the knowledge in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad-Gita, it's just all conjecture. And all the philosophers, maybe this, maybe that, and you read it, and after a while, you just get a headache. You don't get any enlightenment. Your intelligence doesn't become satisfied. You just think, why am I wasting my time here when I could go outside and play a game of football with my brothers? So that is not the case in the Bhagavad-Gita. But the Bhagavad-Gita, as Prabhupada says, must be understood in disciplic succession. So we're all very fortunate. Here is Prabhupada and his great, incomparable spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and then incomparable Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who wrote a river of songs and bhajans, and then we have Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, and so all these great, and then Madhavendra Puri, Krishna Das Kaviraj, Jiva Goswami. These personalities are without compare. Even in the Western world, they study Jiva Goswami as one of the greatest philosophers of all time. But motivated interpretation, they have this Darwinian nonsense, right? That our grandfather or great-great-grandfather or something was an ape in Africa, and then we all came up to Europe, and then some went this way, some went that way. And when they talk about the history of the world, civilization started somewhere in the Fertile Crescent, and that was the Garden of Eden, they speculate that. And anything east of Babylon, which is modern day, what's the capital of Iraq?
Baghdad.
Huh?
Baghdad.
Baghdad, yes, that was the original Babylon. They just completely ignore it. Oh, that's just old mythology. Oh, that's old stories. Even though when you come to India, you see all these incredible buildings and the incredible language of Sanskrit, the most complex, the most precise, the most wonderful language on the planet, that linguists have traced the European language, and they see it's the father. But these Western atheistic, Masonic, Anglican nonsense people, when they came to India, they thought, how can we break down the faith of the Indian people in the Vedas? And they actually had competitions. There was people like William E. Jones and all these nonsense people, And they said, well, the Vedas can't be true because we know from the Bible that the world was created 5,000 years ago. This is their understanding. And you see, like we're studying Ramayana now in the temple, and we can calculate about 1.5 million years ago, Ramchandra, because he was in Treta Yuga, so and so forth. But that is nothing. 1.5 million years, the time spans given in the Vedas. We know that our Lord Brahma is 50 years old. He's in the middle of his lifespan. And so if you calculate you can calculate the time when the universes were pulsed into existence. But then they're all saying, oh, the world's going to end. Oh, we're going to run out of oil. There's going to be a cataclysmic event. Everything is going to become overheated. The oceans are going to dry up. But the world carries on. Because these people are in a death cult. They are in the material world, and so the man-made religions, they always end up death cults. Somebody's got to die to save us. There's going to be huge disaster. But the message of the Bhagavad-Gita is eternal life. By realizing our relationship with the Supreme Lord. But that is all dismissed by the Rakshasa, the Asuras, the followers of Duryodhana and all these nonsense people. So if we accept Bhagavad-Gita in disciplic succession, as Prabhupada says, then we enter an ocean of knowledge that is ever fresh, because it is non-different from Navayovanam Krishna, ever youthful Krishna. But we have to accept it in disciplic succession. Prabhupada says a person. That is Shiksha Guru, somebody who knows the essence of the Gita. Jnaninas Tattvadashina. So the Guru is one who knows the absolute truth by sight. So there is two ways to see the absolute truth. There are those people who have had the darshan of Krishna directly. And for example, at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni, he gets the darshan of Krishna, and throughout the Bhagavatam, further examples, Dhruva Maharaj and so on. But then there is Shastra Chakshus, those that see the absolute truth through the Shastra. And that is preparation for the darshan of Krishna. The darshan of Krishna, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in the Jaiva Dharmas in 3 ways. First is bhava. If one actually gets genuine bhava, not just, I feel good today, but spiritual touch of the transcendental plane, that is a preparatory darshan of Krishna. Then there is Vak darshan, the Supreme Lord, just like he spoke to Narada Muni after he spoke to Narada Muni in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. And then there's darshan, where the vision of Krishna is revealed, just like in chapter 11. The Virat Rupa. So there's many darshans, all different forms. Of course, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. So there's many, many forms of Krishna. We know there's the Das avatars, there's Gun avatars, there's Shaktavesh avatars, and so on and so forth. But Krishna is the apex of all the personalities. He's the source of them all. Just like what does Krishna Arjuna say in the Param Dharma Param Bhavitram Paramam Bhavan? You're the supreme abode, you're the supreme pure. You are, I can see, you're the apex of the absolute truth. So that is the Bhagavad-Gita. It is the revelation of the Supreme Lord. Because sometimes people say, oh, there is so many religions and they're all going the same way. But that is not what is there in the Gita. In the Gita, Krishna explains some people worship Yanti Deva, they worship the demigods as God, as the Supreme, right? Pancha Upasana. Some people worship Nirviseshvadis, the energy or the Brahman as the absolute. And then some people, they worship the bhutas, the ghosts and demons, as the absolute. And then some people worship mankind, or their forefathers of the absolute. But then Krishna says, those who worship me, they come to me. So really, in the Vedas, in Sanskrit, there's the word Pashandi. Pashandi is somebody, he's counted as atheist, but he's somebody who has a wrong understanding of the Supreme. And that is a form of atheism. It is not good enough to say, oh, I worship God. I worship Ayers Rock as God. You know, like the Aborigines, they may, or I worship a tree, or I worship my rickshaw as God because it's providing for me and my family. All these. So, of course, repeated inquiry into a subject, which is the propensity of a human being to inquire into the absolute truth, that will bring one to the absolute truth. So in that way, sincere inquiry to the truth. But the thing is that sincere inquiry can be in a moment if you get sadhu sanga, sava shastra hoy, lava mata sadhu sanga, sava siddhi hoy. So sava siddhi means that the sadhu, because he's realized in Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his association, his sangha, not even verbally, but just by physical association or mental or reading his words, he can plant the seed of faith in Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the revelation. And this is important because logically, if you think, oh, I believe in God, oh, you believe in God, and you believe in God, well, but I believe in God is a rock, I believe in God is a rickshaw, I believe God is the light, I believe God is love. Well, if there is a God, he must have his own personality, right? It's not that he's subject to your elective discussion. Well, I think God is love. I love my wife, and that's God. So, okay. Everything is God, so God is in a kiss. So my wife and I, we are worshipping God. So, but this is, okay, everything is God. But the message of the Bhagavad-Gita is that you worship manmana, the most confidential knowledge. You fix your mind on the Supreme Person, not necessarily just all his, even his expansions or his devas or his energy or his material energy. Because whatever you fix your mind upon, that's your destination. Right? We go where our consciousness is, and our consciousness goes to what we're attracted. Right? So if we're in the modes and we have no intelligence, those that are in the modes of ignorance will go to mode of ignorance result. Those in mode of passion will go to that. Mode of goodness will go to that kind of result. But those that are transcendental and worshipping Krishna as the absolute truth, the transcendental Lord above the material energy, their destination is eternal life, full of bliss and knowledge, because that is what they're realizing in this world. So that is the purpose of the Bhagavad-Gita, to lift people out of their speculation, their conjecture, and present the absolute truth. And anyone who, like we said at the beginning of the class, there's no comparison between the Bhagavad-Gita. It's not been changed for 5,000 years. It's not this idea, that ism, this ism, that ism, concoction, some mind trip, some psychop. It's just nonsense put forward by people in the modes of nature. But Bhagavad-Gita is that manifestation of the spiritual platform in philosophical, verbal, Leela form. So this chapter is called Setting the Scene. Right, Prabhupada? Chapter 1, I believe. Also, sometimes it's called the dejection of Arjuna. We'll get to that later on. But setting the scene, as Prabhupada spends further time in the purport, And it's always good to expand on what Prabhupada talks on. In the end there he says that Dhritarashtra says the sons of Pandu. He's separating them from the Kuru dynasty, because the Kuru dynasty includes the Pandavas. But he didn't want to include them. Now Dhritarashtra, he wasn't a bad man, ultimately. In the Bhagavatam, if you remember, he meditates upon the Brahman and the element fire, and he, through his yogic power, he burns up his material form and he enters the Brahman. So that is the result, that he wasn't really fixed in devotion to Krishna or affection to Krishna, because his affection ran to Duryodhana and his sons. Right? And Duryodhana, we understand from Mahabharata, the Shastra, the Acharyas, he was incarnation of Kali Yuga. So at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, we know who is Kali. He's the false ruler. And we see that in the world, right? We see in the Bhagavatam that the Devas, they went to Lord Brahma and said, we don't know what to do. Earth planet Bhumandala is covered by all these Rakshasas and demons, and what we're going to do about it. You know, we don't know how to handle them. So don't worry, Krishna's coming to cancel them out. So hopefully, so that is the setting the scene ultimately. So there, Duryodhana, incarnation of Kali, he was beating Dharma at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, right? Kali, the cow of Dharma, or the bull of Dharma. And then Parikshit Maharaj came upon the scene, correct? And he said, Dharma, why are you in such distressed condition? Kali was standing there dressed as a king, but he was not looking effulgent at all. He was looking like a bad day or a bad night, some overcast person. Dharma didn't say, he's beating me, because Dharma's answered, well, there's many philosophies, and some talk Kama Mimamsa, some talk this, some say it's by chance, some say it's this. But all I know is that this is happening by the sanction of Krishna. It's happening because nothing can... Sometimes people say it's the will of the Lord. Wrong. It's the sanction of the Lord. We have free will, and we're performing activity, and Krishna sanctions it. It doesn't mean to say it's his will. It's not his will that people get murdered. But he sanctions these things because of karmic effect and so on and so forth. So Dharma said to Parikshit, there's many philosophies, but all I know is this unfortunate condition. This has the sanction of the Supreme Lord. He's Paramatma, he's the all-pervasive Lord. So I accept it as his grace. So there's a great teaching in that, is there not? And then, because Parikshit says to Dharma, said, now I can see you are the actual personality of Dharma, because you accept everything as the mercy of the Supreme Lord. So that is the Srimad Bhagavatam, second verse, Paramahansa Samhita. Niyamatcharanam. Right, that it's understandable, the science of Godhead is understandable by the non-envious. So Dharma is completely non-envious. Personality of Dharma is not a fault finder. What are the five austerities of speech? One should be truthful, beneficial, non-agitating, pleasing, and should recite the Vedas. So Dharma didn't say, he didn't. He was a perfect gentleman, right? He said, it's happening by the sanction of the Lord. So this is a good teaching at the beginning for us as devotees. Sometimes we're in a society and we may have certain conflicts here and there, personality conflicts, but we should not hold it in our chest, I'm going to get revenge. Because that's the problem that Amba had, right? Amba, she wanted revenge on Bhima. We can talk about that. Bhishma, sorry. So we should be tolerant and humble and see everything is the sanction of the Lord. But that doesn't mean to say we don't assert ourselves as wanting to perform our dharma, our duty to the spiritual master. So it's a fine balance. But we see ultimately, and we should always try to be gentlemen on the path of bhakti, right? And forgive and forget. Because after all, don't we upset other people? Ourselves? People may say something to us. Okay, never mind. I'll be the personality of Dharma. Even if they're not the personality of Dharma, if they're the personality of Kali, then you be the personality of Dharma. So Duryodhana, he wasn't the personality of Dharma. He was avaricious. And so that is what corrupted Dhritarashtra, because his attachment to a corrupt son. He wasn't attached to his nephews, the Pandavas, who were all pious and saintly. He was attached to somebody that wanted to control. And ultimately, chapter 16, divine and demoniac natures. We're talking about all the different philosophies of the world. But there's only really two types of people in the material world. There's those that accept the Supreme Personality, to some extent. They may not know fully, but they understand there's a Supreme God who's the creator, who's the controller, who's the enjoyer, who's the maintainer, and I should live by his codes. And I should develop my love for that Supreme Lord, and I should serve that Lord. That is the divine. And they have different conceptions, but it's, again, as we say, it's all perfectly presented in the Vedas of a transcendental abode where I'll live eternally. So that is common, is it not? Even the atheist, when they say, I don't believe in God, you say, what is that God that you don't believe in? I don't believe in somebody who created everything, who knows everything, who controls everything. They all have the same idea of God. Do you see the point? But they are rejecting the idea. Sankalp, vikalp, accept, reject. They don't like the idea. I remember, because many years ago I was watching a debate, an atheist and a theistic person, and the person, I don't believe in God because I don't like the idea of somebody who knows everything that I'm doing. Where's the logic in that? He's supposed to be a bit intellectual. Well, just because you don't like the idea, it doesn't mean to say he doesn't exist. Right? There's no sense in that. And he's supposed to be a big intellectual. He died of throat cancer, by the way. Poor fellow. But at least his mind was fixed on God. But his mind was fixed in the Kamsa, disciplic succession. Kamsa couldn't stop thinking of Krishna, but he was death, right? So that's the atheists. Like I say, the material world, ultimately everything is a death cult. Like even that philosophy, he said, God is dead. But then somebody wrote underneath, no, you are dead. No, God is still alive. And so they have these man-made religions, it's all about death and savior and escaping death. And so the atheists, they say, oh, there is no God, it's all a void. The material energy. Oh, well, it doesn't really explain anything. Where does the material energy come from? Oh, it's always been here. Well, why has it always been here? Oh, never mind that. If you say the material energy is always existing, still it doesn't satisfy. Why is it always existing? You say it's got no source. But the thing is, the Supreme Lord is the source, and he's the person. And everyone, even the atheists, they have this common understanding. And we've said it many times. If you say to a 5-year-old child, when I was, I've got younger brothers and sisters, so I remember when they were coming, I said to my mother once, I said, because, after number 3 or 4 or something, I went to my mother and I said, Mother, where do babies come from? You're having another baby, you say? I think I was about 5 or 8. And my mother said, well, when you're married, God knows you want to have a baby, so he sends them. I thought, okay. But then, just to finish off the story, if you like, I just remembered it. I read in the newspaper, you know, they used to have a stop press. And in the stop press says, baby in Brazil, girl in Brazil, 10 years old, has a baby. So we didn't have television, so I used to read the paper. So I went to my mother and said, you can't be married at 10. So why does God give a baby to a girl that's 10? She's not married. You said when you get married, God knows you want babies, and he sends them. So my mother said, well, sometimes there's a special case. So but I could understand the idea of God, right? God, he knows everything, he's doing everything, right? So it's natural to a child, is it not? It's even natural to an atheist, right? So everyone believes in God, but some reject God. That's the demoniac. And the demoniac, they want to control this material energy and enjoy it. That is, and all their philosophies have come to that. Whether it's Luciferianism or Satanism or materialism or sciencism, it's all about controlling the material energy and enjoying it in forgetfulness of God. Whereas the theistic person, the divine person, the Sura, I want to use this life to develop my relationship with the Supreme Lord, so let me do that. So, setting the scene, let's go back. So that's the purpose of the Bhagavad-Gita. So, where did this big division in the Pandavas come? The Pandavas and the Kurus. So usually the Mahabharata is taken to start at King Santanu. And you know the story. We'll just lead up to this verse. So the story is that Santanu, one day he was on the bank of the Ganga and he saw this beautiful maiden, fell in love with her, asked her to marry, and that was Ganga Devi. And Ganga Devi said, yes, I'll marry, but I'll only stay if you don't question my activity, what I do. So, okay, Santanu, besotted. Yes, darling, whatever you say. So then she had 7 sons, one after the other, and each one, after birth, she put in the Ganga. So this is a very terrible thing. But Santanu is loving his wife, just like Duryodhana is attached to his sons, and he doesn't know what to do. So on the 8th, he couldn't take it anymore. He says, don't do that. Why are you doing this? So then Ganga Devi said, well, actually, this is the 8 Vasus, and this is, the 8 Vasus are the 8 elemental deities. There's the sun, the moon, Dhruva is highest, Dhruva, the pole star, the sun, the moon, and then the deities of Akash, air, fire, water, and earth there. So Bhishma, who was the 8th one, they had been cursed to take birth because of an offense. What had happened is that the 8 Vasus, they were, up in the Devalokas having a great time. So the wife of Bhishma, Prabhash, or sometimes he's also called Dayus. Let me see. Yes, anyway, he was encouraged by his wife, go and get the Kamadhenu from Vasishtha Muni. So he was also under the control of his wife and got into trouble. So Vasishtha Muni said, take birth on earth. All 8 of you, you're acting in this terrible manner. Go down there to Bhumandala. You don't deserve this. So the other 7, the main protagonist was Bhishma. And he was Prabhasha. He was the Vasu in charge of ether. Very powerful, most powerful of the gross elements. That's an important thing to understand, that all the elements all the elements of the material world, whatever entities, are controlled by personalities. So he remained, and he was brought up there. His name was Devavrata, and he was brought up there. And eventually, when he grew to manhood, he was taken by Ganga Devi. Ganga Devi said, "Now I'm going back to my abode, my heavenly region, and I'm taking Devavrata." And Devavrata was trained up by all the big acharyas, and Parashuram was his astra guru. Eventually was going to have a fight with him later, but like Vasishta Muni, Sukaracharya, all the different 8 big sages, they all trained up Devavrata. And then he came back, and he was the faithful servant of his father, Santanu. Santanu was, of course, lonely and heart-struck, because Ganga Devi, his love had disappeared. So one day he was on the bank of the Ganga, and he met the Satyavati, who was and that is a very interesting story, Satyavati. But anyway, Satyavati was very, very beautiful, and she used to row. She was the daughter of a boatman that took people across the Ganga, I believe, but she was supremely beautiful. So Santanu fell in love with her, asked the father, "Can I marry your daughter?" Because this is an important thing. Casteism has become too prominent in Kali Yuga. It's more important that the qualities of a person be judged. And so even in those days, the Kshatriyas, they could marry people of a lower caste, but generally the women of a lower caste couldn't marry above their caste. But the Kshatriyas, they were encouraged actually to have wives and children because they carried such potency, and their children would be good. So the father of Satyavati, now this is very interesting. He's the big king, but the father said no. I'll only allow the marriage. It wasn't the king just said, "I'm taking your daughter." No, he was following Dharma. Because the king is not meant to exploit like Duryodhana was, but he was meant to serve Dharma like Yudhisthira. So Santanu said, "Well, why won't you marry?" "Well, because I want her offspring to be the king." So Bhima said, so then I can't do that. Devavrata has been trained up. He knows everything. He's going to be a great king. He was completely, but of course he fell in love with Satyavati, been very lonely. He was a king, Kshatriya, mode of passion. He needed his companion. He went back. So Devavrata saw, he's very upset. This is terrible. Why is my father? Eventually he found out. So he went there and he spoke to the boatman. He said, no, why is this? Well, I want my children to inherit the kingdom. So Bhishma said, "Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I won't inherit his children." Because he loved his father, and he was a great soul, generous. That is the quality of a Kshatriya, ready to give, even if you want to fight, I'll give you a fight. Right? Bhishma, he gave a son to Hidimba, right? She wanted a son. So that is the dharma of a Kshatriya, to be very generous. To nobody should be turned away without satisfaction from the Kshatriya. So, but then said, no, but your children, you may not take the throne, but your children, when you have children, they'll attack my children or my grandchildren through Satyavati. So Bhishma said, no, then, okay, I will not marry. I'll stay celibate my whole life. And that is the Bhishma vow. The Devas resound, he's Bhishma, he's going to not marry, not have offspring. So then the marriage took place, Satyavati. So then Satyavati with Santanu had 2 sons, yes. Chitrangada. And that is the name of a Gandharva. So before he had children, Gandharvas are just the Manusha entity above the human entity. As we explained 2 classes ago, they're like having 50 times the enjoyment of a unit of enjoyment on the material plane. So Chitrangada didn't like this idea. You've got my name. Why? Who's this? Who do you think you are? My name is Chitrangada, and now you're calling yours. So they had a big fight. It went on, and Chitrangada, the son of Satyavati, was killed. So that was terrible, without issue. So then there remained Vichitravirya, right? So Bhishma thought, well. Oh, and Bhishma took another vow. Also, this is important. Besides the Bhishma vow of celibacy, he took the vow that I will serve whoever is on the throne. I will see the image of my father in that person, and I will serve that person without deviation. So this is important as the Mahabharata went on. So there's 2 vows he took, important vows. So Vichitravirya, so Bhishma thought, okay, the king of Keshi, yes, the king of Keshi was having a Swayamvara. He had 3 beautiful daughters, Ambika, Ambalika, and they were very beautiful. And the Swayamvara was that all the big kings and princes would come, put on their best armor and look good, and they'd all line up, and the princess would choose. She would have a garland. But Bhishma turned up there and said, hey, you guys step aside. He snatched the 3 girls and took her away, took them away. They chased after and insulted them. I'm taking them for my nephew, right? No, step nephew, Vichitravirya. There was a bit of a fight, and Salva chased after and challenged him to a 1-on-1 fight. And Bhishma wounded him but let him live. Then he went off and took Ambika and Ambalika back to Hastinapur. But there in Hastinapur, Amba could have escaped from the chariot, but she didn't in the big battle just before, after she was taken from Keshi. And that was a mistake, because when she came to Hastinapur, she was offered to Vichitravirya, but then she said, no, I can't marry. I was going to put my garland on Salva. My heart has gone to Salva. So Vichitravirya, okay then, please Bhishma, take her back to Salva. She's in love with another man, Kshatriya Dharma. I don't want to impose myself. Let him take her back. But then that which is taken should never be given back. So then she was offered to Salva. And even though Salva, he chased after Bhishma in a big fight, trying to capture his beloved, Bhishma was so powerful after all the training by Ganga Devi, all the great acharyas and big Shastra gurus, Parashuram, that was no problem for Bhishma. So he said, no, sorry, Kshatriya Dharma means he's been taken, I can't take her now, because that was their dharma. So Amba was heartbroken. Then she went back, and that's when Vichitravirya said, no, I can't, I've given you to Salva, I can't take you back. So she was rejected in that way. So who was the next one? Yes. So she was rejected by Salva, then Vichitravirya. So then she went to Bhishma and she said, look, you've caused all this problem, now you must marry me. Because especially a respectable Kshatriya woman has only 2 shelters, and that is the husband or the father. So, but Bhishma said, I'm sorry, I've already taken the vow of celibacy. So Amba was completely disturbed. what am I going to do? She went to the forest, she had consultation with sages, performed austerities, eventually met Ganga Devi. There are different versions of the story at this point, but Ganga, half her body, she became a huge tapasvi. She performed tapasya in the Jamuna and so on. Many places, went to great sages. There was one tapasvi that trained her up in the austerities. But the whole thing was in her heart she wanted. And she consulted with the sages, and the sages said, you're in this pickle ultimately because of Bhishma. And then her mind fixed on it. Yes, he stole me away. And when I was rejected by Salva and Vijitavirya, then he rejected me too. So ultimately it's his fault. So all these austerities were performed to get revenge on Bhishma. Right. Eventually, just to finish her story a little bit, she took birth. Yeah, she met Ganga Devi after her story and told her, I'm trying to kill your son Bhishma. And Ganga said, okay, half your body will become a river, but it'll be very dry for 8 months of the year. It'll be very crooked like your mentality, and it'll be very hard to bathe in. I'm not sure which river that is. I couldn't get that. Maybe it's Amber River. Is there an Amber River or something? Yes. Anyway, I don't remember that from the Mahabharata. I wrote it all down here. Anyway, so she was born as the daughter of the king of Drupada, who was the father, Drupada, who was the father of Draupadi, who married Arjuna, and the Pandavas. So she was brought up as a boy, and her name was Sikandini, but she was brought up as a boy. And then she was married to the daughter of Hiranyavarna, who was the king of Dashana. And of course that caused a big problem, because they found out that the daughter, that she was also a female. You know, Ganga Devi had given her the benediction that she would be born as a woman, but she'd be transformed into a man. So she was born as a lady, the daughter of Drupada. I think he's the king of Benares, was it? No. Panchala, that's right. So she went to the forest again, and she met a yaksha there. Oh no. What to do? Decline. Goodbye. Thank you very much. Don't call again. I don't know. How do they work? Who knows? Anyway, so what was I saying? Oh yes, so she met a yaksha, a forest deity. You know, a yaksha, they're very close in relationship to the Rakshasas, the deities of the forest, the mystic mode, dear me. Can't take a hint, can you? Decline. Don't try again. So he exchanged his masculinity for her femininity. You see, his mystic power. We're not talking about Kali Yuga residents here, and she was a great tapasvi in a previous life. So she became Sikandi, right? And then she thought, she took the side of the Pandavas in the war. And that's a big story, because she wanted to kill, or be responsible at least, for the killing of Bhishma. And it was in the war, actually, Arjuna was behind her, and Bhishma said, she's a woman. She may have been transformed into a man by the yaksha, he knew everything, but I'm not going to fight with her. But Arjuna was firing arrows, and when he got the final blow, I'm shot by Arjuna. That is in the Mahabharata. He wasn't killed by Sikandini. But she got her revenge in the sense that she was responsible for Bhishma's death. So everything worked out in a way there. So that's the story of Amba. So, unfortunately, Vichittravira died of TB. And he loved his wives very much, Ambikali. So, what's going to happen now? Bhishma's not having children. Chitradanga Gada has died. Vichittravira has died of TB. So what's going to happen? So then Satyavati said, well, actually, when I was once taking Parashara Muni across the Ganga, he wanted to have union with me, and he's a great sage. And I said, no. He said that he will restore my virginity. I want to have a son by you. And so, but how is this possible? Well, there's an island there, Dvaipanya, born on an island. Vedavyas was born on the island. And he, by his mystic power, he put a dark cloud over the island. And Vedavyas was born from that union. So knowing this, that Satyavati, wife of Santanu at this point, said, well, there is the Vedic system of niryoga. The brother can beget children in the wife of the brother if there's some problem. And so everyone, oh, it's wonderful. Vedavyas, he was a big, he's a Shaktavesh avatar, Tapasvi. He's going to write the Vedas and the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Puranas, the Mahabharata. So he was island born, Dvaipanya Vedavyas. And of course he's a great rishi. All this marriage he's not interested in. He's meditating on the absolute truth in ecstasy and full knowledge. So yes, of course, mother, if you want, I'll give children. So Amba was the oldest. And then Ambika had union with Vedavyas. But Vedavyas, like I say, he was a big tapasvi, and he was darkish in complexion, born in the cloud. There was a certain, with his eye glowed like, with the fire of austerity, and he was. So she closed her eyes during the act of union, and Dhritarashtra was born blind. And that is also part of Vedic knowledge, that according to the consciousness of the union, a corresponding soul will be born. Therefore, people don't know this in Kali Yuga. They just get drunk and have sex, and then some monster is born. They're running around the streets, raping and pillaging. Anyway, so it's a big problem in Kali Yuga, Vana Shankara. And actually it's interesting how Krishna says, yes, the world is overburdened. Anyway, we won't go into population control at this point. But, so, of course, Dhritarashtra, his father then in Niyoga is Vedavyas, who is a great tapasvi. So he was also a great soul. There's no doubt about that. We should always remember this. So he was born blind. And then Ambilika, she had union with Vedavyas, and seeing Vedavyas, his potency and Shakti, she went pale. So Pandu was born, and he was very white, and she was very pale, so he was Pandava. And then Amba, of course, was too busy performing austerity, but then they thought we'd better have another. So a handmaiden in the Kshatriya, there was a very nice handmaiden. I couldn't find out her name. Does anyone know her name, the handmaiden name? It's very hard to find it in the Mahabharata. Anyway, so she had union, but she was a very sweet, humble lady, and she thought, this is a wonderful opportunity. I'm going to do some service. This great sage is going to give me a son. And Vidura was born, expansion of Dharmaraj, right? But she was a Sudrani, so to speak, but she was a highest quality lady. She understood blessing of Vedavyas's association, so Vidura was born to her. And Vidura became the big advisor in the court. So then you have Dhritarashtra, who fathered Duryodhana. His, yes, and then Vidura was born to the maidservant, and Ambika was the mother of the Pandavas. Now, it's an interesting thing too, just like we see here. And so that was the split. Now, Vidura, incarnation of Dharmaraj, he always favored the Pandavas. But there was also another reason why Vidura favored the Pandavas. Because the whole Mahabharata, many acharyas, sages have said, what really destroyed Duryodhana was the offense to Draupadi. Because she was in her monthly course and she was dragged into the vicious assembly. And the only two people, and they tried to disrobe her. She was extremely pious lady, wife of the Pandavas. She was lost in the gambling game. Yudhishthira had one weakness, and that was gambling, right? So she was gambled away, and she called out to Govinda, and he supplied endless cloth. But only two people protested, it explains in the Mahabharata, and that is Vidura and Vikarna. This is not good. And and also Dhritarashtra was going to chastise Duryodhana. This is not good, Duryodhana, what you're doing to Draupadi. But he referred to, and Duryodhana called Vidura, who was his uncle, and he was very proud, so he never really accepted Vidura as being of royal descent. So the demons are very much into family lineage and not the quality of a person. That's another point in this Leela. So he referred to Vidura. He was never... So what happened then was that Duryodhana referred to him not as his uncle in a disparaging way, but as the prime minister, because Vidura was the prime minister. So he didn't recognize the fact that he was a family member. He was the uncle. He said, you're ungrateful, you're a minister in this government. He didn't say, you're my granduncle. You're my uncle, you're just a minister. So Vidura, that was a great offense, and that separated Vidura, in a sense, away from the Duryodhana side of the Kurus. So he took the side of Vidura, and that is to be expected, because he's expansion from Dharmaraj. So that is how the scene was there. So of course Duryodhana, incarnation, expansion of Kali, he was always, he made a house. He was nasty from birth. He was always planning to kill the Pandavas. He was always envious towards the Pandavas and his brothers. They were always planning. And the weakness of Dhritarashtra, he couldn't restrain his son because of family affection. He wanted the Pandavas were obviously more qualified. And that's another point. It was, even though Pandu was younger, and his wife, or his mother rather, Ambelika, was the youngest of the three sisters, they were obviously more qualified than Duryodhana. So Duryodhana, he tried to kill the Pandavas, the house built of wax and poisoned cake, and so many plans, Duryodhana, but Krishna saved them all. Queen Kunti recognizes that in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. So then it came to the gambling match. Then they had to go into exile and for 13 years and so on. And then they came back and said, now we want our portion of the kingdom. Duryodhana had usurped the throne. But he said, and the Pandavas said, well, just give us 5, we're Kshatriyas, we need somebody, some area, give us just 5 villages. But Duryodhana, he was paranoid. He said, those 5 villages, they're all encircling Hastinapur. And eventually they'll act upon me. So Duryodhana said, I will not give the Pandavas enough land within which you can stick a pin. All right? All right? That is the demon, right? He just wants to get more. I'm a trillionaire, I want another trillion. I want another, more and more and more. Because lust is unlimited, like a fire. You can't put out a fire by throwing wood on it. So that is the demoniac. Like I say, the demon, the Kali Yuga people, they want to control the material energy unlimitedly. Globalism, this, everything. Ultimately, the only plan is to be the big man, to be and control this material, like Ravana. They don't want Ram, they want Sita. They don't want Narayan, they want Lakshmi. And they want as much Lakshmi as they can. They have no end. They're not satisfied. They're not Atmaram. They're not getting a spiritual taste. They're not realizing their relationship with the Supreme Lord. They're not seeing their destination in transcendence. So they just want to get more and more and more and more and more. And then they cause hell on earth. And this is what we're seeing, isn't it? It's almost terrible to read the newspapers nowadays. Endless war everywhere just to expand territory and land. It might come under the guise of communism, globalism, socialism, whateverism, but it's the demoniac impetus to control the material world and control the energy of God, but disparage God, kick him out. So this is incestuous, right? Sita Devi is Sita Ma. She's always, right? So Bhumi is Ma. So if you're rapacious towards your mother, you're an incestuous, demoniac rascal. And that's what these people are. They have an incestuous relationship. They're the son of the material nature, but they want to conquer and become the husband of the material nature. So they are the son of their mother, Bhumi Devi, the material, the energy, Durga Devi, but they want to become the husband. But there's only one husband, and that's Lord Shiva. He's the husband of Durga Devi. So Lord Shiva, and when Durga becomes too disturbed, she becomes Kali, right? She expands as Kali, and she just destroys the demon through war, pestilence, and everything. And then you know the story of Lord Shiva. She becomes so enraged with these demoniac sons who are trying to be her husband, who are trying to be her controller, that she just destroys them. The mother is very patient, right, with the children. But when the mother becomes angry, just like Amba, they say, there's a common saying in the West, they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. So Amba was scorned by Bhishma, Salva, Vijayachavira. She was going to get her revenge. So remember that, boys. Don't upset the ladies. Because our Vaishnav ladies are pure and open-hearted. But it's something to remember in life. So Kali has that. When she is so disturbed, these demons, then she just destroys them. And she becomes almost, in her Leela. So Lord Shiva has to lay down in front of her. And she steps on, the Murti. Yeah. And she has the tongue, I'm standing on my husband. And she comes back to sobriety. So that is the actual Mahabharata war. Kali is just fed up. They're all demons. It's in the Bhagavad-Gita. They're acting as kings, but they're really just Kali. They're just Kali. And so we see in this world the rapacious aptitude. The people are not being taken care of. Billions are spent on aircraft carriers and bombs and things. And the people are lying in the street without food or shelter. Taxed to death. They can't get married. They have no money. They're taxed and taxed until they're just pale, shivering people in the material world. So when Kali starts to move, these demons, they should be very careful. So that is the start of the Mahabharata war. Kali on the battlefield destroying all the demons. And the Pandavas survive because they're the devotees. So in this material world, there's two types. There's the Asura and the Sura. Asura means not very pleasure. Sura means very pleasure. So take your pick. Are you going to join this side or that side? So that is what we say to the world. Take your pick. The godless people, they will always be defeated. And as Krishna explains in the Gita, those that are envious and mischievous, I always throw them into lowest species of life. But the devotees come to me. So that's the background of the Mahabharata as it comes up here. And Dharma Kshetra. Because ultimately, the whole world is Dharma Kshetra. Because it's all a holy place, being the energy of the Supreme Lord. And especially India and all the whole Bhumandala is blessed because Krishna comes here and he displays his Golok Leela here. So this is actually the highest place in the universe. We may not realize it when it's cold. But this is the greatest place in the universe. There's no better place to be. Because we're not troubled by material desire here. This material body is useless for enjoying. But we can study the Vedas, we can study the Gita, and we can perform Sangha, and we can chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare. Right. Thank you all very much coming to class. Any question? You have question?
Yes, but maybe it sounds a bit naive.
It's all right. We're all naive.
Politically, but you were talking about not the will of God, but the sanction of God. That is one question. Would you mind explaining how do you describe sanction? What is the
Well, everything is under the control of Supreme Lord.
Okay, then my next
In the
question.
material world, Krishna is expanded as Paramatma. So Sutri Mani Gana Iva, everything is resting upon Krishna.
So when somebody dies, everybody, the whole world say, that's God's will. It's God's
Well,
will.
that's what I explained in the class. Maybe you didn't quite catch it. We say that, but it has to be understood properly. The will of Krishna is, and that's manifest as Lord Chaitanya, is that we leave this material world and the cycle of birth and death. We're eternal spirit souls. And we go to the eternal atmosphere. That's the will of Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, they manifest that will. But having given free will to the living entities, Krishna, out of his humility, does not interfere with our operation of that free will. Do you understand? He doesn't. You see, Krishna is unlimitedly beautiful, unlimitedly powerful, but he's also unlimitedly humble. Having given free will, he doesn't feel it's his position to interfere with your operation of that free will. Do you understand?
Okay, connected to this.
So therefore, he gives facility in the material world for people to act as they will, within the boundaries set by their karma, their desires, which manifests as their material mind and body. So within that karmic arena, we have free will. Like we may have will to fly in the sky, but if we're in a human body, that is very difficult because we don't have wings. So Krishna will give us wings to fly with in the next life, for example, to put it simply. So Krishna is facilitating the living entity, and he's sanctioning and allowing our free will. But he is not imposing his will on us. He is, in one sense, giving us intuition as conscience. Just like, why do thieves go out at night? And why do they hide behind a tree before they try and rob a house? They know they're doing the wrong thing. That is direction from Paramatma. But the thief is thinking, I don't want to put my conscience aside. I want to rob this house. You see? So Krishna has the sanction, okay. You want to rob, you want to be a murderer, okay, go ahead. But in the form of conscience, he tries to restrain the living entity, but he doesn't stop the living entity if that's the chosen path, if that's the sankalp, the determination. So therefore it's not wrong, it's incorrect to think, to interpret that the will of Krishna, that everything is happening because Krishna wanted it to happen. That's the point. Do you understand? You see, it's not Krishna's will that you overeat and become diabetic. Right? But if you do that, that's your will.
Okay,
you understand? So what the troubles that come to us, they're not the will of Krishna. They are the result of our activity sanctioned by the Supreme Lord.
Like you were talking, yeah? If you see the Western
This is a fine point. You have to meditate on it. But once the penny drops, you'll understand.
There were so many innocent old people, children, babies are killed.
Well, that's it. This is, you see, now you're coming to the very good point. You see, this is what the atheistic people say. There's no God because babies are dying.
They're bombarding innocent people and they go on and they
But you're missing the point again. You're stating the case of the demons. No, babies die because it's a karmic influence from the past life.
Okay. So the whole world...
For example, now, you know the leading cause of death in the world is abortion. Did you know that? Abortion. Yeah. Now, is that the will of Krishna or the will of the mother?
The karma of the baby.
But it's the will of the mother also, isn't it not?
But it is due to the karma of the baby.
Not necessarily. You see, karma is being generated all the time. Krishna explains in the Gita the intricacies of action and reaction are very hard to understand. And even the greatest sages will have a discussion on this point. But you have to understand that karma is being generated all the time. That it is not a mechanical event. Because the free will, the consciousness expressed as free will, is operative. And that is more powerful than the material energy. You see, that question is asked in the Mahabharata, which is more powerful, the effect of one's previous karma or one's actions now. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, forget the past that sleeps and ne'er the future dream at all, but act in times that are with thee, and progress ye shall call. So you see, you may have a disease now. I'm not saying you, or one may have a disease now. But if he surrenders to the disease, then he'll die of the disease, right, that person. But then if you have the disease and you say, I'm going to fight it, I'm going to take the proper diet, proper treatment, and I'll overcome the disease. So you can say, oh, that person had diabetes. Why he didn't die? Because he exerted his will. So you see, the thing is, the demons, they don't like that idea. They like a mechanical, demoniac understanding of the material energy, whereby they can blame everything on the Supreme. People are dying because of God. Do you understand? So that's their demoniac mentality. So you will hear in a very loose manner people say, it's the will of God. It's the will of God.
Okay, the whole...
No, it's the will of the mother that kills the baby.
Okay, but you're talking specifically about abortion. I want to...
No, I'm using that as an example to explain the general case.
Okay, my general question, why so many innocent children and babies are...
You're returning to the same point.
Only for the richness
Mataji asked
of the
question
oil.
about this sloka, Mataji. Question about this sloka.
Anyway, finish your question.
Question about only this
You,
sloka.
it's the third time you've asked the same question.
Gita first sloka, you asked this question about this sloka, Mataji.
Why is it happening? Because it's the desire of the people involved. Can't you understand that? That you're the key factor in your life. It's what you do now. And that's yoga. Yoga puts the responsibility on the individual. Yes, there's karmic influences, but you act now. And that's why there's punishment and reward. That's why some people are becoming elevated, some people are becoming degraded, and some people are going to the transcendental abode, because they are operating their will correctly. You understand? So Krishna, Eko Yoda Dadati Karman, he is fulfilling our desires. He is fulfilling our desires. All of them, as they surrender, I reciprocate accordingly. Everyone follows my path. So it's up to us to behave correctly through our desire. Yes, this is the point. That if you want to do the bhajan of Krishna, then learn the bhajan of Krishna and do it. You see, I'm not saying you, but if it's up to you. You have to understand. You go back to Godhead because you chose to do the bhajan of Krishna. But the demoniac people like to say, it's not my fault. It's just like, say I rob a bank, and then I sit in front of the judge and I say, the devil made me do it. What will the judge say? Well, the devil's telling me to send you to the jail. It's not a very good excuse to say it's the will of the devil, you know. That's the dualists, they say that. The devil made me do it. Or even in devotee life, devotees say, oh, Maya made me do it. No, Maya follows your decision. If you decide to worship Krishna, then Krishna will give you all that intelligence, Tadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. But if you decide to go into Maya, then Krishna will give you Maya. Krishna is reciprocating with your desire. But the demoniac like to blame it all on Krishna. Right? I don't believe in God because there's suffering. Well, it's stupid. Maybe God is making you suffer. That's like a child saying, I don't believe in my daddy because he slapped me on the face when I stole money from my mother's purse. My father doesn't exist because he chastised me for not doing my homework. So there's also, in the material world, everyone's got a reason to not behave properly. So it's the will of God. That is nonsense. Things are being sanctioned according to your desire, within the boundaries of your karma. And therefore there's punishment and reward. Try to understand. Simple point. You are the key factor. Krishna is the facilitator. It's just like you have children and you put them in a sandbox with blocks and cables and buckets, right? And you just sit and you watch. They're building castles made of sand. They're having a little wrestling match whose castles are better. You're watching them. Is it your will that they fight over which castle of sand is better? No, you're just the observer. You're facilitating. So this material world is a facility for those people who rebel against the Supreme Person, who reject. But because you reject the Supreme Lord, then you're distancing yourself. It's just like if you distance yourself from the sun, you go into darkness. Is it the fault of the sun? You go into illusion. Is it the will of Krishna, or is it you that's choosing to go into the darkness?
So you're talking personal about me?
I'm not talking, this is the Vedic conclusion.
I was talking about some people.
No, I'm saying you, but I mean, if one goes
So
into
people,
darkness.
The people for money who are killing so many innocent babies and people, destroying and bombarding everything.
So
I wanted to know whose karma is it, or is it God's sanction? That's the only thing, because it hurts me. I am a human being. When I see all the babies, motherless, fatherless, homeless, I say, why these people are doing this for all the money and all the riches of the world, of a country which is not theirs? Is that the will of God? That hurts me.
we've returned to the same question. And I've been explaining for the last 20 minutes the same point.
I didn't understand.
It's their desire.
Their desire, okay.
They're desiring.
Their demon desire.
Right.
Something like that.
If you have a book on the shelf, does the book jump out of the shelf onto your hand, or do you have to reach for it? Tell me. Yes. So the book's in your hand. Your karmic effect is because that's what you have reached for. So you have to act in times you have to take responsibility. Just like I say, it's there in the Garuda Puran. If you go in front of Yamaraj and he said, you did this, you did this, you did that, and you say, it wasn't my fault, I was forced to do it, then your punishment is more than said, yes, I was doing terribly demoniac things, I'm going to try and behave properly. So we have to take responsibility. Right? Otherwise, that's the modern psychology, this concocted psychology. Everyone's a victim of the past, right? 300 years ago, my grandfather was made into a slave. Therefore, I can kill people at the 7-Eleven and shoot them and rob the till. Because I'm a victim of the past. That is not the yogic way. The yogic way is take responsibility, learn good behavior, and act and exert yourself in that direction. And there's terrible things in the world because people are in ignorance, and that's what they're choosing to do. Who's pulling the trigger? Is it God or the soldier? Huh?
The question may be why God sanctions, but then the answer you already gave, it's a free will, it's His love.
Yeah, there's some karmic effect there. But always remember that karma has been generated all the time. And there's many cases of people that just turn away at the battlefield and I can't fight anymore. I just won't take part in this. and they, right? So this is very important. And also it's the victim syndrome. I'm the victim of the past. Huh? I have to be a robber because I'm born in a poor family. Everyone's making an excuse. And then they have a Messiah syndrome. Oh, the world is a terrible place. We can't do anything about it, but God's going to come and fix it. In the meantime, I'm going to get drunk. Right? So in the past they have the victim syndrome. I'm the victim of the past. And they think, and there's all troubles now, and there's a Messiah. He's going to kill all the bad people. So in the meantime, I'll remain a fool and rascal, because the Messiah's coming to sort it all out. But in yoga, no. Take responsibility for your life. Right? And so you have Bhagavad-Gita on your shelf, take it down. It's not going to jump down the shelf into your hand. You have to exert yourself. And when you understand that, then your road is clear. Right? Because you realize, hey, I'm the master. Everyone talks about power right nowadays. That's because that's the propaganda of the Rakshasas. Power, power, power. Women should be empowered. But you have power already. The power is in your ability to choose. Do you understand? And some people are choosing to do terrible things and going to hell.
So the one who pulls the trigger is his responsibility.
Huh?
The misuse of free will.
Yes, that's the point.
Free will properly used then it won't happen.
Yeah, but people pass the responsibility to God. It's the will of God that there's, yeah. Just like so many things. Because that's the demoniac mentality, to blame the Supreme instead of taking responsibility. Just like, somebody causes a car crash and then the police come and they say, why were you driving on the wrong side of the road? It's the will of God.
God made you like that.
I pull the trigger, it's God's will.
Well, now you're getting the point. Now you're seeing the point, right? You're seeing the point now, right? We've got through. Everybody. So don't pull the trigger. Read the Bhagavad-Gita. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.